loving the vibes, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah.
Loving the vibes. As Sister Trish said, my name is Winnie Okello. I was born in Kenya, East Africa, and as life had it, the plot twist happened, and I ended up finding myself in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And so one of the things that I love to weave in the story of how I became and unbecoming and unbecoming is motherland connection plus understanding and appreciating where we are, right? Because it's very difficult to know where you're supposed to go when you don't recognize where you're from, right? We must appreciate the journey of our origins, because also too often we don't get to really understand the origins of who we are as a people, especially when it's stolen from you.
Yes.
Like, let's recognize that, right? When your story is stolen from you, you don't get to appreciate the full power of all that is in you, right? You don't get to understand the full potential of the greatness that lies within each and every one of you, right? Because that means something. That meant something to me when I was studying engineering. My background is in engineering, right? As an African child, there's a couple of majors that you're allowed to get into if you haven't heard it, right? As an African child, you're growing up and probably you might be into arts or dance or speaking. I love speaking, if you can't tell. And in Kiswahili, that's one of the languages I speak. In Kiswahili, there's a term called kimbelembele. And when I was a kid, I will explain in a second. When I was a kid, kimbelembele was actually looked at as it's a negative term, right? It's like that child who's like, they have so much energy. They're always, they're talking to everybody. It's like they have no filter. Like they meet a new person, they're like, hi, how are you? Who are you? What do you do? And they're curious about the world around them. Kimbelembele. So as I grew older, I came to really embrace this term kimbelembele. And the other thing I love is etymology, right? Words mean something. Understanding the importance of words, language, and context, right? Words matter. Language matters. Context matters in the telling of our stories and validating of our lived experiences, right? So kimbelembele, really, as I got older and I really began to unpack it, what it literally means is, okay, I'll break it down. Going back to the root is mbele. Mbele is forward, or the front of, right? So ki, or like that prefix, if ki mbele, it's almost like one who's constantly at the front, right? One who's constantly in front of the thing, the harbinger of the thing, right? And so it's interesting how the terms or the words or the names that people call us, even when it may be intended to put you in a box of sorts, that could be the very thing that ends up elevating you and putting you in a position where the skills that you expressed as a young child that looked like they seem to be negative, those are the very skills that end up being for your positive as you grow older, right? My ability to be comfortable talking to anyone and everyone, right? From the person who's seemingly low on the totem pole, but they have a story too. I have been pleasantly surprised and amazed by the stories of those who seem to have the most humble of positions, but when you sit and help them unpack and share their stories, my God, you find out there's so much wisdom there. Because words instruct, but life teaches you so much more, right? You could sit there and read about a thing, but until you go through it, honey, like you said, right? You could sit there and get technical knowledge, but the wisdom that comes through that practical understanding, my God, that takes you farther in life than any book could ever take you. I know that. Again, as a woman in engineering, I stand for my sisters in STEM, I do. And quite honestly, probably the thing that really connects us is the struggle.
Yes.
Right? In any environment you find yourself being a part of the marginalized, there's a bonding that happens, right? There's a bonding that comes through going through the muck of it all and surviving, right? Because we sit back and we're like, man, y'all have heard that meme, but oh boy, did we have a time last night, right? You probably heard that. Well, in my mind, because I mix a lot of like my Swahili and English experiences. There's a phrase I often say when I'm with my Swahili speaking people, whenever we reminisce on the journeys that have brought us to where we are. And it's tumetoka mbali. Simply translated, we have come from far. You ever find yourself sitting with your sister girls or the people who encourage you and you're like, man, we come from far. You know, when you look back on the years of grinding from, you know, whether it was a one-room apartment or being unhoused or, you know, you literally had nothing in the bank account. You know, you just sit back and you're like, hey, tumetoka mbali, you know? And it's like, when I could say it in English, but there are just some things that when you say it in your mother tongue, it just hits. It hits a different way. If you speak a different language, you know, well, even Ebonics, right? Which is why I appreciate Ebonics. Because I kid you not, the linguistics of Ebonics actually really resonate quite well with African dialects, right? When you really look at the etymology of how words are structured, Ebonics tends to follow the linguistic structure of your indigenous languages. And so that's why whenever I sit back and think about it, and I get to talk to people and have those moments as I listen to your stories, and I'm like, I get chills. It does something to my spirit. It encourages me, right? Which is important for us to come back to these moments together and encourage one another. Because I may not know your story, right? But by you sharing your story inspires me to know that I too can get there, right? We need to see examples of those who've made it. We need to know that the mountain can be moved, right? I know we didn't go to church, but church is wherever you are, how you do it, right? Right? You can get the word however, wherever, you know, it comes for you, right? We need to know that the mountain can be moved. I am a testament of that, right? I look at my undergrad experiences, man, you know, as an African child, came here, struggled, struggling sometimes still. But even through all of that, I look at all the opportunities where fate aligned, and it was these constant reminders of, you're on the right path. Where providence comes, alignment comes, right? When you begin walking in purpose, when you begin walking in that path that your soul is calling you to, right? Because too often we find ourselves in seasons where we're like, I want more, I want more, I want more. And then there's a season where you sit back and more wants you, right? The seasons where you realize that more wants you, that's where divine alignment comes in. And you stop efforting and things begin to align for you. Yes, you continue to do the work because you've been doing the work. And divine intervention then begins to flow because you're finally aligned. You're walking where it's already raining, right? In Kiswahili, to talk about rain, right? When you watch the weather or when you look outside, right? We talk about life in seasons. We talk about life in seasons. And seasons, when we think of seasons, right? Typically, what do you think of? Summer, spring, winter, right? Fall, all that good stuff. And it makes sense that linguistically we talk about life in seasons, seasons reflecting time and change, right? And the good thing about seasons is, and at least when I think about it in Kiswahili, right? Which is why it's good to learn a language, right? It gives you a little bit more context into how life truly is, right? When you think of seasons, especially rain and weather, in Kiswahili to say that, oh, I think it's going to rain or it looks like it's going to rain, what we say is, It's almost like we say, "Nasikia itanyesha." What you say actually is, "I hear rain." When you say you're hungry, it's, "I hear hunger." You feel me? It's not about what you see, it's about what you hear. And hearing is not just about the auditory. Hearing is also that unction in your spirit. When something speaks to you, when that inner person, when your spirit speaks to you and kind of inspires something, listen. You'll hear the rain. You'll hear when the seasons are changing. And hopefully it ought to give you some sense of peace. Even though there'll be struggle, right? Because change, oh my goodness. Change is like birth, right? I've never given birth, but I heard and I seen it, and I'm like, Lord, honey, that is an experience, right? Change is the birthing into a new phase or a new season, right? To be a leader, you must go through metamorphosis of change, right? Right? For a butterfly to get it to become, for a caterpillar to become a butterfly, the metamorphosis, it requires a part of a version of them to die for a new version to be born. And breaking through the cocoon helps build their wing strength so they can fly. Nature is a very good teacher. That's one of the things I've come to love about speaking and connecting with folks. It is understanding, especially, again, going back to STEM folks. One of the things I really call out to my fellow STEM folks is how too often we get so caught up in being so technical, we forget to be practical. What good are we if we're so technically proficient, but we cannot explain things in terms and examples that the general person can understand? Because far too often our politicians are not STEM folks, right? We can do all the research we want. We can write all the technical papers we want. But until you can explain it to a brother and sister to help them understand, well, this is how it affects you. They'll just be like, all right, cool, good stuff. Keep going. To me, that's what makes the difference between an okay leader, right? Our manager, a good leader, an effective leader, and a great leader. Right? Good leaders come and go. Great leaders are remembered. Good leaders will come and go. And leadership is not just about your title or your position, or how many people answer to you. It's an African proverb where it says, a leader who has nobody following them is just a person taking a walk. Take it for what it's worth, my friends. A leader is not something you call yourself. A leader is something others bestow upon you. Are you taking a walk or are you leading? Because leadership also requires you to be of service.
Amen.
True leadership requires us to be of service to one another, not only to self, but to community. And community is not just the people who live in proximity to you. Community is having an understanding of human connection to one another. Right? Community is enabled to know the same thing. I'll get into some definitions here because I love a good definition. Forbes defines leadership as a process of social influence which maximizes the efforts of others towards the achievement of a goal. There's a goal, objective. There's a person who's supposed to do a thing, which requires decision making and intentionality in that decision making. Therefore, a leader is the one who then commands or leads that group, organization, or country. And people look at leadership as an act. I look at leadership as an art of sorts, right? Because it's not just about the thing you do, it's how you do it and how other people then respond to you and keep the ball rolling, right? And so when you think of, in this context, we're talking about women in leadership, women in trades, right? When you think of the women who inspire you, what are the qualities or characteristics about them that moves you to be like, I like that. I want to embody that in my life. You may not have to say it right now, but think about it. What about them? What are the characteristics about them that move you? I'll take a step back, right? If you're comfortable, if you feel comfortable, I'll give us about 3 seconds. Throw out some names of women you consider leaders in your own opinion. You don't have to validate that. It is your opinion. Throw names.
Patricia Robinson.
Patricia, come on, sis. Yes. Patricia Robinson, yes. Give us at least 2 more names, people. Simone, thank you, sister girl. Thanks. Simone Biles is mentioned. Come on now. Okay, we need at least 1 more. Michelle, I knew it was coming. Yes. Michelle Obama. Yes, right? So think about the sweet people. They all have their own lanes. They're all riding and driving and leading in their own lanes. And you can't quite compare one to the other because everyone is excelling in what they are doing. Right? Do not compare your journey of becoming or unbecoming with the next person. I think too often we rob ourselves of joy in our process when we do that. Because my goodness, what your journey looks like, it feels like, might be very different from yours or mine. Right? They say comparison is a thief of joy. Do not do that to yourself. And I know we do that sometimes. It's natural. It's human nature. We like to compare. But don't do that to yourself. Remind yourself when you find yourself doing that, take a step back and be like, I'm in my lane. I'm staying in my lane. I am blessed to be in my lane. Nobody else can do the things that I do like I do them. Right? I am meant to fill a particular space that is specifically designed for the skill sets and the characteristics that I bring to that space. Remember that. Remember that. You are uniquely positioned for every season of growth in your life. Don't give up that genuineness to try and fit into a space that ends up robbing you of the reason you're supposed to be in that space. I hope y'all got that. Because too often, I've found that in spaces and positions of leadership, especially by women, I'll talk about myself, right? Because I'm not going to call anybody else out. I'll talk about myself. I remember when I was graduating in undergrad with my engineering, civil engineers, how you doing? And one of the advices kind of that I heard, although it was well-intentioned, as I got older and more comfortable in these positions of decision-making, I realized it was flawed. And it's okay, that's part of leadership, right? Understanding the things that work for you and knowing when to kind of take things with a grain of salt and be like, thank you, but no thanks, and keep it moving. One of the pieces of advice that was given was, don't be so feminine. Dress a certain way, or don't dress a certain way. Talk a certain way, be mindful of this and that, right? There was this idea of do your best to be less feminine so you can fit into this masculine environment. And understandably, the women who came before us, that is what they had to do to make it through those environments. It's a survival tactic, which relates back to what? Masking and code switching, right? For those who may be familiar with, is anybody not familiar with the term code switching? Right? If you're not, it's pretty much the survival tactic that folks of non-dominant culture have to do when they find themselves in spaces of dominant culture in this environment, my people, right? To feel comfortable surviving through each and every day. So when you code switch, you are intentionally bringing down the things that uniquely make you you, that are very valued and valuable. That is added value you bring into that environment. My experience as a Black woman, as an immigrant, as a woman of a particular age, as a person who presents as female, as someone with a particular degree, someone who went to a predominantly white institution, someone who tends to wear their hair naturally. All these things are factors that come into the decision-making process of how I'm not only perceived, but how I am able to walk and move through certain spaces. And if I dare diminish these things or cast these things off as being irrelevant, the data in those spaces will do the same. And they have for so many years. Who we are in research spaces has oftentimes been looked at as negligible data. The fact that certain things affect Black women, brown women, women of marginalized demographics, women of a particular income, immigrants, people who speak differently, right? People who happen to speak with an accent. All these things that happen to make you be of a complex intersectionality, they're valuable. And anytime you find yourself in a position of contextual privilege in these spaces, where you get to have a say in the decision making, please don't shrink down. Please don't do that. Because I know I found it that when I spoke up, yes, there's always a risk of getting called out and pushed out, yes. But after you've paid your dues enough, understand you've earned the right to speak up. The day you feel comfortable enough to speak up, please do, because you will have earned it. You earn the right to say, hey, this thing doesn't work for everybody. Or rather, this thing doesn't work for the people that you're actually trying to reach. How about that? Because you do not have the person in the room representing the demographic that you're saying you're trying to reach. And the sauce that we bring into our environment, you cannot teach that, not even on your best days. They cannot teach that in a lab. They can read about it. They can't teach the sauce that we bring into these environments. So please, bring the fullness of your authenticity to what you do. It matters. It matters. It matters. You matter. We matter. And we have to stand in the gap for one another. As I believe my sister said earlier, right? When she found herself in that environment, surprisingly, there's other women who were the ones challenging her validity. Don't be that woman.
Right.
Please and thank you. Do not be the woman who makes it more challenging for the other women who come into the spaces where you happen to have contextual privilege. Don't be that woman. Right? We are there to make the way for those who come after us. We are there to forge that path and be the light bringers. And so when we talk about, again, women in trades, in the past, people hesitated to get into trades because they're like, oh, I don't know if it makes enough money, I need a 4-year degree. But the reality is trades nowadays are really actually in a higher demand. We need folks to get into the trades. and you can earn just as good of a living, if not more, than folks with 4-year degrees and so much more. Especially when you have transferable skills, family. Your transferable skills actually are the things that really put you up a notch, right? Because when we look at about the median income of Harrisburg, we're gonna bring it local, right? The households in Harrisburg, PA have a median income of about 41,000. Whereas median income of the US is around 65, okay? And then when you get into trades, without a college degree, you earn automatically more than the median income as a single income person. So when we talk to our youth and give them the opportunities and tell them these are the opportunities available to you, when we really allow them to have a choice of what their life could look like, the possibilities of what could be of their lives in not only earning an income, but generating generational wealth.
Yes.
Because that's where we're supposed to be getting to at this point in life. It's not just about surviving.
Right.
It's about how do we get from surviving to thriving. We need that. Really give our young folks the option of, hey, if you're not necessarily looking for college or at college right now, well, what are your real options to still have you be in a place where you feel valuable and contributing to society? We need to give them real choices, fam. And so, I'll remind us once again, don't shrink to fit in spaces that were not meant for you, that were not designed with you in mind. And it's very difficult to push them to accommodate you when they're not yielding. So what do? You allow yourself to expand beyond the boundaries of those spaces. Simply take up space. Take up this space. Allow yourself to grow, right? Because otherwise they look at you like a weed. And what happens to weeds when they grow in spaces they were not intended to? Thank you, you pull them out. Or you put chemicals to kill them. It's nature. Go where you are designed, or create spaces where you are designed to thrive in. So I commend you, sis. Continue to create spaces where you are thriving.
Yes.
And for all of you who are creating the spaces where you can thrive, do that. And so if you give me about 2-3 more minutes, I will close down with this. A little something that I worked on recently that not only encourages myself, but it's almost like the reminder that I often wish we had to for one another. And it's titled From One Queen to Another. Don't ever forget to you wear your crown. To my fellow queens out there, to the sisters often labeled as strong, black, and women, may you be strong and so much more. Smart, sexy, beautiful, brilliant, and bold. Unapologetically you every step of the way. Be strong and gentle and kind and loving. Be self-aware and community-minded. Be ready to receive as much as you so often willingly give, ever so relentlessly, even to your own demise at times. But you see your worth beyond the annexation to another, beyond mother, sister, child, or wife. Know the intrinsic value you bring into every room you grace with your presence. Yes, be strong and so much more, dear queens. Willingly rest in the power of your divine feminine while nurturing the force within your masculine. Embrace all the complexities and nuances that create the royalty that is uniquely you. The throne and the crown both call out your name. The question is, will you answer?
Yeah, that's right.
So I thank you for the opportunity to share with you today. Stay connected.